welcome back. If you watched part 1, you already know the basics. We got a strange swamp, cursed history, we got a Bigfoot, a giant bird with possible teeth, mysterious lights, and they're all very unsettling. All very much that I can't explain it, but maybe science can category. Part 2 is different, because part 2 is where the Bridgewater Triangle stops being a paranormal curiosity and starts being something heavier. We're going to talk about the hitchhiker, the UFOs, the cult, the murders, and the question that sits underneath all of it. Why does this place keep producing darkness? Is it the curse? Is it the history? Is it just coincidence stacked on coincidence until it looks like something more? Or is there something genuinely wrong with this corner of Massachusetts? I don't have a clean answer for you. But then, by the end of this episode, you're going to have a lot to think about. Let's get into it. Let's start with the most famous ghost in the triangle, the red-headed hitchhiker of Route 44. This one isn't just one person's account. There are decades of reports from unconnected people. Route 44 runs through Rehoboth. It's a long, dark road, trees on both sides, no lights for long stretches. The kind of road that feels longer at night than it does during the day. Since at least 1960s, drivers on this road have reported seeing a man with red hair, usually in a flannel shirt, standing on the shoulder. Thumb out. Now the reports vary slightly in detail. Some say he looks completely solid, not transparent, not glowing, just a man standing there, which is almost worse. Because a glowing ghost you can dismiss. A completely normal looking man standing on a dark road at midnight is just unsettling in a very human way. Some drivers slow down, some stop, and the other ones who stop all describe the same thing. He gets in without being invited. He says nothing. He sits perfectly still. And then, somewhere down the road, he starts laughing. Not a normal laugh. Something hollow. Something that doesn't quite fit the situation. And when the driver turns around, he's gone. No open door. No sound. Just an empty seat. One person reporting this, that's a story. 10 people reporting this, that's interesting. Dozens of people across multiple decades, all describing the same red-haired man. All describing the same laugh. All describing the same empty back seat. That's something else. Nobody knows who he is. Some people think he's the ghost of someone killed on that road. Some think he's something older. Something tied to the land itself. Some think he's a very committed prankster who has somehow maintained this bit for 60 years. Much respect if that's the case. But it's probably not. Now let's take a walk down the ghost roads and meet the rest of the residents. The hitchhiker isn't the only ghost associated with the triangle, because apparently the roads here are just haunted. All of them. Multiple witnesses have reported a woman appearing suddenly in the road, standing completely still, and then vanishing before impact, which is the kind of experience that makes you pull over and sit quietly for a while. Others have reported figures at the edge of the tree line, just standing, watching, not approaching, not threatening, just there. Like they're waiting for something, or watching for something. There's a stretch near the swamp where multiple people have reported seeing a figure walking along the road, only to look in the mirror and find the road empty. And then there's the Hornbein School, a one-room schoolhouse in Rehoboth, built in the 1840s. According to the local legend, it's still occupied. People walking past at night report hearing children's voices inside, the sound of small feet on wooden floors. The school has been closed for over a century. There are no children. There shouldn't be any sounds, and yet people keep hearing them, which is either a ghost story or a very concerning situation that someone should probably look into. Beyond the road ghost and the school, there are the personal accounts, the ones that don't make headlines, the ones that live in conversation, passed from neighbor to neighbor, shared at the kitchen table and in parking lots. A family in East Bridgewater in the 1980s reported what they described as poltergeist activity. Cabinets slamming on their own, objects moving between rooms, a voice muttering in an empty room. They didn't know what to do with it. They didn't call a priest. They didn't call a paranormal investigator. They just lived with it. Because what else do you do? Hey, honey, the ghost moved the keys again. Check the counter. Already did. Check the counter again. That's just life in the triangle, apparently. Other accounts describe campers hearing their names whispered from behind trees. Hikers feeling a hand on their shoulder when no one is there. People waking up in the middle of the night with the absolute certainty that something is in the room. Now, most of these can be explained. Settling houses, wind through the trees, sleep paralysis, the human brain's tendency to find patterns and presences in random stimuli. All of that is real. All of that is documented. But it doesn't explain why so many people in the specific area report the same kinds of experiences. It doesn't explain the consistency. It doesn't explain why generation after generation, the stories keep coming from the same place. Now let's look up, because the sky over the Bridgewater Triangle has its own reputation, and it goes back further than you might think. The first documented UFO sighting in this area was in 1760, before airplanes, before cars, before electricity. Local records describe a sphere of fire hovering over the Bridgewater area, which in 1760 people had no framework for. There was no UFO category. There was no science fiction. There was just a thing in the sky that shouldn't be there. And people wrote it down because it was just that strange. In 1908, another sighting. A large lantern-like light witnessed by multiple residents. Written up in the newspapers. Described as moving in ways no known aircraft of the time could. Then the 20th century really got going. 1968, a group of people in Rehoboth see a bright orb floating among trees near a swampy stretch. They watch it for several minutes. It drifts. It hovers. Then it zips away at a speed that makes no sense. In 1976, multiple witnesses claimed 2 UFOs landed along Route 44 near Taunton. By the time any official arrived, the objects were gone, but the grass where the object landed was scorched. No official explanation was ever given, which is the kind of thing that makes you go, Then in 1994, a police officer who chose to remain anonymous reports a triangular craft with red and white lights, flying low and silent over a stretch of road at 2 a.m. He had a clear view. He insisted it was not any conventional aircraft. And here's the thing about that report. 1994 was around the same time Belgium was experiencing a massive wave of triangular UFO sightings. Thousands of witnesses, multiple countries, all describing the same thing. A triangular craft, low altitude, silent. Now, is that a coincidence? Probably. But it's an interesting coincidence. And then in 1999, multiple people around Lake Nippeneket report a tremendous boom. A fast-moving streak of light crossed the sky. Everyone assumes a plane went down, or a meteor. Search teams go out. They find nothing. No debris, no impact crater, no explanation. Just a boom, and a light, and then nothing. Okay, now we need to talk about the part of the Bridgewater Triangle that isn't so fun, that isn't spooky in a Halloween way, that is genuinely deeply disturbing. And I want to be clear before we get into this. What I'm about to describe is documented. It's criminal history. There's real victims, real crimes, and real consequences. In the late 1970s, the Freetown Fall River State Forest, which sits in the southeastern part of this triangle, became the site of a series of murders. Young women found in the woods. Evidence at the scenes pointed towards ritualistic activity. Investigators eventually connected the crimes to a group of individuals who had been using the forest for what they described as satanic ceremonies. The ringleader was a man named Carl Drew. He and his associates were convicted. The media coverage was intense, sensational. Devil worship in Massachusetts, satanic cult murders. And while the sensationalism was real, the crimes were also real. And the forest where it happened, already known as a strange place, became something else entirely. A place where the paranormal reputation and real human evil had merged. And it didn't stop with the arrests. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, the Freetown State Forest continued to produce disturbing discoveries. Animal carcasses arranged deliberately, ritual symbols carved into trees, evidence of fires built in clearings far from any trail. In 1998, a headless cow was found deep in the woods, positioned deliberately, knife marks on the body. No group was ever charged. No explanation was ever given. Police who patrolled the forest at night described a specific kind of unease. Not supernatural, just the knowledge that people had done terrible things in those trees and might still be doing them. That's the part of the Bridgewater Triangle that changes the whole picture. Because now it's not just, is something paranormal happening here? It's also, are people being drawn to this place because of its reputation? Is the darkness attracting more darkness? Is the legend itself dangerous? Those are uncomfortable questions, and they don't have clean answers. Okay, we need a brief tonal break because we just covered cult murders. And I think we've earned a moment with the PUKWUDGIES. PUKWUDGIES are described as small, human-like creatures from Wampanoag folklore. About 3 feet tall, tricksters. They can appear and disappear at will. They lure people off paths. They cause mischief. And they are objectively the most chaotic entry into the Bridgewater Triangle's paranormal catalog. Because everything else here is at least trying to be scary. The hitchhiker is creepy. The swamp lights are unsettling. The giant bird is alarming. But PUKWUDGIES are just little guys doing little guy things. Except those things include pushing people off cliffs, luring children into the woods, and apparently speaking gibberish at grown men in their backyards. Which brings us to Bill Russo. Bill Russo is a man from Raynham, a man who in 1990 was minding his own business near his yard when he encountered a 3-foot humanoid creature, speaking gibberish. His dog, who was presumably also a reasonable creature, refused to go near it. Bill described the creature as chanting something that sounded like "Iwachu, Iwachu," which is not a known language, not a known phrase, just a small creature in his yard saying "Iwachu." Bill Russo went on television to talk about this. He appeared in a documentary. He had maintained his account for decades. And look, I'm not going to tell Bill Russo what he saw, because Bill Russo was there, and I was not. But I will say, if a 3-foot creature showed up in my yard speaking in an unknown language, I would also go on television. I would go on every television show there is. So now we come to the question that sits underneath everything. Why here? Why does this one region, this 200 square mile stretch of southeastern Massachusetts, produce so many different kinds of strangeness? There are several theories, and none of them are fully satisfying, which is kind of the point. Let's take a look at the theories, and you can let me know what you think in the comments. Theory 1. The curse. The land remembers what happened. We have the violence of King Philip's War, the displacement of the Wampanoag, the theft of sacred objects. All of it left something behind, and something that doesn't dissipate, something that attracts more of itself. In this theory, the ghosts, the creatures, the lights, and the cult activity are all symptoms of the same wound, an ancient one, and it's still open. Theory 2. Psychology. Once a place earns a reputation, everything becomes evidence. A strange bird becomes a thunderbird. A shadow becomes a ghost. A noise becomes a sighting. The legend creates a lens, and through that lens, everything looks paranormal. This is a real psychological phenomenon. It's documented. It's called confirmation bias. And it absolutely plays a role here. But it doesn't explain the reports that predate the legend. It doesn't explain the 1760 UFO sighting. It doesn't explain the colonial soldiers who came back from the swamp with stories before anyone had coined the term Bridgewater Triangle. Theory 3. The environment. Swamps are genuinely disorienting. Marsh gas produces lights. Dense vegetation changes acoustics. Isolation amplifies anxiety. And the human brain in a dark, unfamiliar environment will generate experiences that feel supernatural. All of that is true. All of that is documented. But it doesn't explain the structured craft. It doesn't explain the consistent descriptions across unconnected witnesses. It doesn't explain the things that were written down before anyone had a reason to exaggerate. And last, theory 4, something we don't understand yet. This is the least comfortable theory, the one that requires the most intellectual humility. The idea that the world is larger and stranger than our current understanding allows. That there are places where things happen that don't fit any category, where the rules bend slightly, where the darkness is not a metaphor. I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm just telling you that the Bridgewater Triangle has been producing unexplained reports for over 300 years, across generations, across technologies, across every attempt to explain it away, and it's still going. So what is the Bridgewater Triangle? After everything we've covered, the history, the creatures, the lights, the ghosts, the crimes, the little guys saying "Iwachu," what do we actually know? We know the history is real, the violence was real, the loss was real. We know the reports are consistent across decades, across generations, and across people who had no reason to coordinate their stories. We know that some of what happened here, the cult activity and the murders, were real in the most concrete, documented criminal sense. And we know that the legend endures, not because people are gullible, because people keep having experiences here that they can't explain. And they keep coming back. Investigators, ghost hunters, curious locals, and people who heard the stories and needed to see for themselves. And most of them come back saying the same thing. I didn't see anything definitive, but something felt different. Something felt persistent. Something felt like it knew I was there. Maybe that's the swamp, or the history. Maybe that's the human brain doing what it does in the dark, isolated places. Or maybe, just maybe, there's something in those trees, something in that water, something on those roads that has been there for a very long time and has no intention of leaving. The Bridgewater Triangle is still out there. The swamp is still dark. The roads are still empty. And somewhere on Route 44, a red-haired man is waiting for a ride. Don't give him one. I've told you how this ends. If you made it through both parts, you now know more about the Bridgewater Triangle than most people who live 20 minutes from it, which is either impressive or concerning, or possibly both. If this series got under your skin, subscribe, because there are more places like this, more histories like this, more questions that don't have clean answers, and I'll be asking them. And whether it's by plane, train, or UFO, there's always a story to tell. See you next time.